Emotions are an important part of high performance and everyday human experience. Emotions have a cognitive component to them as well as a physiological component to them. It informs the way that we think about a situation, and it provides a feeling state in our body. Now, traditionally, people have categorized emotions as either good or bad. But recent research is really pushing back on that notion that there are such a thing as good or bad emotions. There's just emotions. And so Dr. Susan David, who coined the term emotional agility, states that, hey, emotional agility is about not getting stuck in a particular feeling state for too long. Because depending upon how emotionally invested we are in a particular moment, it can become very anchoring and we get stuck because we get extremely frustrated for making a mistake, for example. And in the world of sport, where competition and the moments move very quickly, to get stuck in a particular moment because of an intense emotional response is not going to lead to consistent high performance. So emotional agility is being flexible with your thoughts and feelings so that you can better handle everyday situations. So by recognizing that emotions aren't necessarily inherently bad, like why do I feel frustrated, and being frustrated now is throwing me off of my game, in practice and in moments leading up to competition, let's ask ourselves, okay, first off, I'm not frustrated as a person. I'm a person who feels frustrated. So I'm feeling blank. So I always have people say feeling between an I and whatever adjective that they want to use. Now we've created some space. With that space, we can now start to evaluate, okay, well, why is it so frustrating to make mistakes? Well, because I practice to be as perfect as I can be, and making mistakes I feel is a sign of weakness. Okay, well, if you're a human being and human beings make mistakes, what's the worst part of making a mistake? And now we can start to dig in a little bit more and really recognize what is it that's driving this particular pattern of emotions whenever mistakes are made. So if we want to undo these patterns, we first have to recognize why we get there in the first place. And once we have a better understanding, we know that, hey, it's not necessarily a bad thing that I'm frustrated. It means that I care, but that I can't get stuck here. And now how can I pivot so that I can get back to a more neutral and open mindset so that I can be ready for the next moment? So by being agile with our emotions, being able to feel them, experience them, but then quickly move on so that we're not stuck in them is incredibly important. Put a simple way, I like to use the analogy of a sponge in a bucket. So we're told very often that the human mind is like a sponge. It can absorb a lot of information. Well, if the bucket represents emotions, and they could be emotions of anger, frustration, happiness, joy, etc., anytime you experience an emotion, you put that sponge in the bucket. The longer the sponge stays in that bucket, meaning it can't get out and be agile, the more saturated the sponge becomes. And then it becomes very difficult to undo those emotions. So if you're really frustrated and you're stuck there and your sponge is stuck in that bucket and it's absorbing all of the water it can possibly do, it's absorbing all of that frustration. In order to wring out that sponge, it's going to take a lot more effort than if we just quickly dip it and be able to move forward. Sometimes we can't stop people from going in the bucket, but how long somebody stays in the bucket is completely up to them. So rather than try to think about controlling our emotions, let's be more open to them. Let's not be so judgmental that they're positive or negative, but that they're informational data pieces and that we feel them. And we can feel them temporarily to inform how we're doing and what we need to do better in order to quickly be able to move on and stay engaged in what we're doing for more consistent and high performances.